You tried everything in your power. You went for all-night classes. You read all the syllabus. You finished everything. You answered the questions correctly, but you still failed. You keep asking yourself several questions that what exactly are you doing wrong? But nothing to show for it. I understand how you feel. I've been a student and I know the mistakes that students make that makes this happen. And also as a teacher, I've come to understand why some students fail no matter how much they study. They think they've done everything they could. By the time I mark their scripts or check some things, I discover that they are not doing enough. There are stages students pass through when preparing for an exam. In each stages, there are mistakes students make, and I'm going to be sharing that with you. Now, the first stage is the planning stage. Second stage is the studying stage, and the third stage is the exam stage. Now, in the planning stage, there are students, for them, these stages doesn't exist. They don't bother to plan, they don't bother to do anything, they just go on the way they like. And it is very important for you to plan, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You have so much things to cover, and of course, you have other activities that you need to do in school. So it is very important for you to plan, because it is this planning that gives you a blueprint on what to do and what to focus on. And most students, they don't even bother to plan, they study anyhow. In fact, some students even wait until few days to their exam before they study, which will actually set you up for failure big time. So it is very important for you to plan your time and to state everything that you need to do. And when it comes to planning, there are several things that you need to pay attention, and there are mistakes that you make. So the first thing is that no study schedule. You don't have any study schedule. You don't know when to study. You don't know what to study. You study anything that comes to your mind. You don't have a time on what to study. You don't actually know, okay, this is where I'm going to study. This is the topics I'll be focusing on. This is what I'm supposed to do. You don't have any of that. And if you don't have any of that, you are failed from the beginning, because if you don't have any of that, there's no how you can actually cover all the syllabus that you need to cover. There's no how you can set a balance for all the courses that you're offering, because there are some students that offer 10 courses in a semester. You don't know what to study at that point in time, because these courses are so bulky, and you keep, at that point, you get confused and you don't even know what to study first. But then students end up studying courses that they are most interested in, which will actually set you up for failure, because there's no balance. You discover that you pass some courses and you fail the other ones. So it is very important for you to have a plan. And if you plan your time very well, you know when to study, you know what to study, and you know how to study. And when you are planning, you should try as much as possible to state what you are going to study for a particular point in time, and the period and the duration that you'll be studying for. So if you have that, and it's what you'll be studying at that point. So if you have that, you know that on Wednesday, I'm studying mathematics by 2 o'clock, and I'm going to be studying it for 2 hours. You have that. You know that every Tuesday, you are going to be studying for 2 hours. So over time, if you start from from beginning of your semester, over time, and you keep doing like that, and you keep mixing it up with other subjects, you discover that there is a balance, and you discover that you've covered everything you need to cover across all subjects. And by the time your exam comes, you won't find it difficult revising, and in fact, you must have touched everything that you need to touch. In the planning stage, another mistake students make, they underestimate workload. At this point, you feel like, okay, you don't have so much thing that you need to study. You wait till when the exam is closed before you study. This is a very bad thing. You don't have to wait till when the exam is approaching before you study. You have to study immediately you resume the semester. There are several benefits of doing this, and this is the major reason why most students fail. They wait to the last minute. If you do that, you will not be able to solidify what you want to learn. That's in terms of learning. There's not enough time for you to understand what you are learning for that course. And also, you will not be able to cover everything that you need to cover. You see that there are so many dangers when it comes to you underestimating your workload and not studying early. If you start doing this from the beginning, you are setting yourself up for failure. And by the time your exam comes and you just rush and you study the way you like, you just go for the exam and you discover that there are questions that you know and there are questions that you don't know. And you feel like your lecturer or your teacher is doing you a bad thing. You are expected to cover everything. And for you to do that quite well, you need to start way from the start and also plan very, very well. It is very, very important. Now, another thing that you need to pay attention to is that when it comes to planning, which is a very big mistake, is that you ignoring your exam pattern. Aside from you planning and know when to study and know when to study, one thing that we actually give you a lens of focus on what to do and how to approach subjects, how to approach some courses that you'll be studying, is that you should understand your exam patterns. When you are studying or when you are planning, it is very important to gather all the past questions that you need for that course. When you gather them, you've not studied at all, you've not started studying. But then once you just look at those past questions, it gives you something like, okay, this is how the course is, this is what I am expecting. And it will actually help you to study for that course, because you already know, okay, this is what is required of me on how to study. Then you actually align your studying with what is required in the past question, and it will help you focus very well from the beginning. It is very, very important. Not that after you've studied, you will now go to the past question and you discover that you didn't put the past question into consideration while you are studying. And of course, you won't do well, because then you have to still go back and study. If you see the past question, check it. It will tell you that, okay, this is what is expected. This is how questions are asked. And this is how I'm going to study in order to answer the question. It is very important to do that. So that is all about the planning stage. In the studying stage also, there are mistakes you make, and no matter how much you plan, if you don't do some certain things while you are studying, you're going to set yourself up for failure, and you start wondering why you failed even when you studied. So I'm going to be stating the mistakes that you make in the studying stage. In the studying stage, there are mistakes you make, and this mistake will never make you to pass, no matter how much you study. And one thing is that students adopt passive learning. Many students do this, and they feel like it is the most effective studying they can ever do. And you feel like you study and you cannot actually answer some questions. It's because you adopted wrong study technique, and it is passive studying. When you are learning passively, you are not engaging with the material. And when it comes to studying and the way your brain assimilates information, if you just study passively by just looking at the book and just reading through without asking yourself questions, without checking whether you understand, then you start having this illusion of knowing, because everything looks fine. You are studying it, you are understanding, and you are reading it, and you feel like, okay, it is entering. You will not know whether something is entering or not while you are studying until you test yourself. Learning, there are some passive learning techniques that you apply which are wrong. Number one is highlighting. It's not enough for you to keep highlighting your book all the time and expect it to get into your brain. You are only painting your book. You are not actually checking whether you understand, which will actually set you up for failure. It is important that you always test yourself when you are learning. And one particular way you can do this is to close your book and try to think about what you are learning. And think about it, that ask yourself questions. And if you cannot answer it quite well, that means you've not understand it well enough, instead of just painting your book. Another thing is that you keep repeating what you study over and over and over and over again. I'm not saying you should not repeat what you study, but as you repeat, try to test yourself. Because it is when you test yourself, you actually know what you don't know and what you know. So if you keep highlighting and you keep repeating what you are studying, or you keep doing rote learning, that is reciting something over and over and over again, the recitation will not actually make it stick into your brain, because at that point you are only reciting it in your short time memory, and this short time memory has limited capacity. In order for you to get something into your long time memory, you have to test yourself, you have to space out your learning, and you have to study over time for you that thing to be stocked into your brain. Another mistake students make is that since they didn't plan and their exam is fast approaching, they tend to study a night before, and at that point you're not giving your brain time to consolidate the information, and in fact you will fail because you didn't solidify some specific details or information that you need to learn, and by the time you are asked in the exam, you will not be able to answer the questions. So it is quite important to adopt the active learning instead of passive learning. And what are the active learning that you need to apply? I'll be discussing that later in this video. Another mistake that students make is that they study for long hours. It is not how long, but it's the quality of attention that you place on what you are studying. If you study for 6 hours and you do not do the right thing that you're supposed to do, you have wasted your time. You don't have to study that long. 2 hours is enough. That's 2 hours. Do it the right way. Apply the active learning techniques, that is, recall what you are learning at home. Try to teach someone, try to explain to yourself without holding the book. If you can do that within that 2 hours and you give yourself a little break and come back, it is enough, instead of just staying 12 hours without assimilating anything. The only thing that can make you stay longer is that you don't understand what you are learning. So in order for you to understand, it is not the fact that you will not understand if you keep sitting and reading something over and over again. That will not make you understand. It is best that you give yourself enough space and wander around a little bit and come back to what you are learning. At that point, your brain has rested, and in fact, underground, it has actually started sorting solutions for you that you don't know about, because the brain is very powerful. So that is why at times when you now come back, when you are wandering around, you just have a quick flash in your brain that, okay, this thing I was reading, this is how it's supposed to be. So it is very important that you should not study for that long. And in fact, if you study for that long without resting, it's also dangerous. So it's pick a quality time and do what you have to do in that point in time. Plan your study way before, study bit by bit, and if it's just that you're studying 2 hours every day till the day of your exam, and you've started since the beginning of the semester, you will not have any issue. And most students study long hours because they've not been studying before, they did not plan, and by the time the exam is closed, they want to rush up because they have a lot to cover, and you will not actually assimilate everything at once. Your brain is not a machine. Your brain needs time to consolidate that information. It needs time to adjust and learn that stuff. It is very important. Another mistake students make in the studying stage is that students cram instead of using spaced repetition. And this cramming, most students do it because they fail to plan and they need to cover everything, and they tend to study everything in a night or just 2 days. They want to cover everything they've been doing from the beginning of the semester. They want to cover everything they've been doing for the last 4 months, which is not possible, because you will break down if you do that. And even if you cover everything, by the time you are in the exam mode, there is no how you'll be able to remember everything. You cannot remember everything because there are some that you will not be able to remember. And that's why sometimes some students will just be walking around and they'll be reciting in their head. It doesn't work like that. In fact, it should not be like that. Learning should not be like that. Learning should not be under pressure. Learning should be something that is fun to you and you have to do. One thing that I would advise you to do instead of cramming is that plan your study. Like I've always said, plan your study. Study bit by bit and use spaced repetition. If you are studying something initially at first, it is not expected that that thing goes into your brain. In fact, you forget over time. It is normal for you to forget. But if you keep reviewing at interval and you keep interrupting the forgetting process, then that is when it gets solidified. You have time to consolidate, that is solidify the information. And the more you forget, the more you remember. Because if you forget and you apply the active recall, you try to recall it and you can remember without holding the book, the information gets solidified. And you try to review and you keep going like that till the end of the semester. In fact, everything will be in your long-time memory. Even after your exam, you'll be able to remember. So that is why it is very important for you to space your learning. Do not cram. It doesn't work. It's one thing that you don't know that happens in cramming is that when you are cramming, in fact, even before cramming, say, whenever you are learning something, is in your short-time memory, is in your working memory. And that working memory, before it gets to the long-time memory and becomes permanent, it takes time. So by the time you are cramming, you are overloading your working memory with a lot of information. But what it takes for something to go into your long-time memory, you cannot lock it in immediately. It takes time. It's a process for it to get into your long-time memory. And one thing that you can do to get something into your long-time memory is to, while you are studying, try to look for something that you can attach what you are learning to that serves as a clue for you to be able to remember. And this thing takes time before it goes into your long-time memory. So it is important for you to study early and keep going bit by bit instead of cramming. In your exam day, even after you study, there are things that happen in the exam day that can make you feel, oh, you saw some things that are familiar to you and you read it. You have to calm yourself down. You have to be patient with yourself and try to reason. First of all, you need to manage your time because you don't have all time at your disposal. You studied a course, you did a course for 4 months, and you are given a course content of 10 topics, and you were asked a question in all these 10 topics. So it is very important for you to actually manage your time. And one thing that you can do to manage your time is that solve questions that carries more mark first. Then go back to the questions that does not carry more mark. If you waste your time on questions that does not carry more mark, so it is very important for you to do questions that carry more mark first. Do them first. After you've sorted them, then go to the ones that does not carry more mark. While you are looking at your past question in the planning stage, try as much as possible to prioritize questions that carry more mark. Study them very well because you know it's going to surface in your exam day. Take for example, I did a course in my 400 level, and this course is operations management. In this course, we're supposed to answer a question on linear programming, and this linear programming in the exam carries more mark. But then we did about 10 topics. I kept studying linear programming over and over again because it is 20 marks in the exam. So if I studied the rest and I did not do the linear programming very well, and by the time I get to the exam, I was able to answer everything, but then I was not able to answer linear programming. That means I failed the exam. So that's why you have to look at the exam pattern, look at how marks are allocated, and tailor your studying towards how marks are allocated. And at that point, execute on your exam day because based on what you've planned before. So, and you can manage your time to focus on the ones that does not have more mark and focus on the one that has more mark, then go later to the ones that does not have more mark because you have more time to do everything. But if you waste too much time on the ones that does not have more mark, and by the time you are done, you will not you will not do well. And also, read your instructions very carefully. You can study everything, do everything, but then if you do not read your instructions carefully, this can make you fail big time. When I was in my 200 level, we are given an instruction that we're supposed to do certain things while we are solving. I've forgotten what it is, but they give us a specific instruction that, okay, you're supposed to do this while you are solving this particular question. But then I didn't read the instruction and I did it the way it is in my notes. Then I failed because I did not read the instruction even after I've studied it. These are the things that you can do no matter how much you study, but you still fail. So you have to read the instruction carefully, know what they ask you to do, then do exactly that. Do not go beyond the scope or go somewhere else where they will not ask you to answer the question. So another thing is that leaving questions blank. Even if you don't know the answer it. Write something. Don't leave anything blank. Make sure you answer all questions. If the instruction says answer all questions, answer all the questions. If the instructions say answer 2 questions and number 1 compulsory, do the same. Don't leave all the questions blank and do everything that you need to do. And aside from the exam, there's another thing that I want you to note while you are studying, because it will help you a lot. Research about each lecturer and know what they want. I'll say it again. Research about each lecturers and know what they want, and always give them what they want. Because you can study, you can do everything you need to do, but then you can even answer all the questions correctly, but then if you don't satisfy the lecturer that will be marking it, you will fail. So it is very important to research about lecturer, know what he wants, know how he wants his questions to be answered. Does he want stories? Does he want short answers? You have to know all those things before you go for your exam, because these are the things that will help you to pass. Because this exam is going to be marked by the instructor and you have to satisfy him or her. So that is all about the mistakes you make. That is all about everything. So if you got so much value from this video, please like the video and also subscribe to my channel. And also check out this other video on how to stop making silly mistakes in your exam. So thank you so much for watching and see you on the next one.